Hi there, welcome back to the YouTube channel. I'm back again, and this represents the last of the main set of the legendary creatures, because I've covered them all now. They're all here, they're all in a playlist along with some of the Foundations Jumpstart stuff. But today it's Tinybones, Bauble, Bear, Burglar. Can't say that correctly today. 1 and a black for a 1/3 skeleton rogue, and whenever an opponent discards a card, exile it from their graveyard with a stash counter on it. During your turn you may play cards you don't own with stash counters on them from exile, and mana of any type can be spent to cast those cards. 3 and a black, tap, each opponent discards a card, activate only as a sorcery. Wow, does this version of Tinybones like you to make your opponents discard? Yeah, and that's what we're going for today. Tinybones is good. I can't argue it. I like the idea of people discarding stuff and me being able to play it at some stage because they've got stash counters on it. Don't forget, even if Tinybones gets killed off, the cards still have stash counters on it, so if I get my rules correct, when you replay Tinybones you can still cast those cards that have got stash counters on them, but you have to have Tinybones in play to do it, so just bear that in mind. But this deck is a whole load of annoyance for all our opponents, so here we go. Okay, right then, so first one, we have the other version of Tinybones, the Pickpocket, coming up from the Outlaws. Deals combat damage to play, you may cast target non-land permanent card from a player's graveyard, and mana of any type can be spent to cast it. A 1/1 with Death Touch doesn't really get blocked that often, so we had to have it in here. Burglar Rat, each opponent discards a card. Nice when you've got Tinybones in play. Same with Elder Fang Disciple, enters the battlefield, each opponent discards a card. Doomsayer does it when they die though, so you can attack with this with Tinybones in play and see if they kill it off, and then get your stash counters on the go. The Raven Man, at the beginning of each end step, if a player discarded a card this turn, create a 1/1 black creature blurred token with flying that can't block, and another way of 4 mana, each opponent discards a card. Another backup to your Tinybones activation as well. And the other version of Tinybones, the Trinket Thief, is here. At the beginning of each end step, if an opponent discarded a card this turn, we draw a card and lose a life. But then we can pay 6 mana, and each opponent with no cards in their hand loses 10 life. Should happen with this deck with a bit of luck. Torak Drek Cantor is here, kicker for the 4 mana. We will do in this. We like the protection from white. Whenever an opponent discards a card, put a +1/+1 counter on Torak. And then when Torak enters the battlefield, if it was kicked, a target opponent discards 2 cards at random. Pick the person with the most cards in hand when you have to do the one with the target opponent, just so we're clear. Vladimir, New Blood, collects us when we commit crimes, which we will be doing. We get to put +1/+1 counters on them, and as long as we have 4 or more, we get to have Menace and Lifelink, so it gives us some of our life back we might be losing off to the other version of Tinybones. Virus Beetle enters the battlefield, each opponent discards a card. Yep, another one we play when Tinybones is in play itself. Abyssal Nocturnus, whenever an opponent discards a card, this gets +2/+2 and gains Fear until the end of the turn. For newer players who may be watching this because Foundations has brought you in, Fear is an old ability, you don't see it very much anymore, but it basically means this creature can only be blocked by black creatures and or artifact creatures. So if you're playing against a red-green opponent, a blue opponent and a white opponent, you get them to discard something, you're getting in for 4 with your Abyssal Nocturnus minimum when you get them to discard, so bear that in mind. Loyal Subordinate is also in at the beginning of your combat on your turn. If you control your commander, each opponent loses 3 life. That's quite nice. Target practice, every bit of removal gets chucked at this, but you might drain people for a bit of life. Blood Vial Purveyor, when an opponent casts a spell, we get that player creates a blood token, which they would probably sacrifice and discard at some stage, and mean they get a trash counter on whatever they discarded. But whenever the Blood Vial Purveyor attacks, he gets +1/+0 for each blood token defending player controls. So gives you a bit of a bump. Hostile Investigator enters the battlefield, target opponent discards a card, there's a crime being committed, and whenever 1 or more players discard 1 or more cards, investigate. That's nice, gives you clue tokens to go and draw things with. Akazolta, the Deepest Betrayal, is also in. Whenever he attacks, each opponent discards a card. For each opponent card, you draw 1. And whenever an opponent discards a land card, we get a Bat 1/1 with flying. And then obviously we get to do the whole dies, transforms, so on and so forth. So yeah, pretty good in this deck. Banshee of the Dread Choir, whenever it deals combat damage for a player, that player discards, but it has Myriad, so you attack with this and you get copies that attack your opponents as well, so not going to complain about that. Yeah, we were playing mono black. Gary had to be here. Not even going to try and justify this, but Gary had to be here since we're playing mono black. Junji, the Midnight Sky. Each opponent discards 2 and loses 2 life when this dies, or we get to get something from our graveyard. From a graveyard onto the battlefield under our control, we lose 2 life. So if there's a big gribbly thing in a graveyard, it's probably worth looking at them. Necrogoyf, because why not? Number of power is equal to the number of creature cards in all graveyards. And at the beginning of each player's upkeep, that player discards a card. Yeah. Tinybones really likes Necrogoyf. They go out drinking on a Thursday night, did you not know? Anyway. Sheldred enters the battlefield. Each opponent sacrifices a non-token creature or planeswalker, and then if we can flip them into the true scriptures, things get very interesting for us very quickly. So Conrad the Grim, because we are going to get things in graveyard, so we might as well do this as a little bit of damage. Kukushko, the Evening Sky, is also in. Put into a graveyard from the battlefield, each opponent loses 5 life, we gain life equal to the life lost this way. Yes, I know Kukushko is a bit of a pain, but yeah, it gives us a way of gaining life, 5, 10 or 15, depending when it happens. Arakisha, the Debaser, is also in. It attacks, put target creature from defending player's graveyard onto the battlefield under our control. And the Encore ability, if we can get to 8 mana to do this, means we do get some nice creatures from everybody's graveyard at some stage. Scythe Spectre is also in, deals combat damage for a player. Each opponent discards a card. That's nice. Each player who discarded a card with the highest converted mana cost amongst the cards discarded this way loses life equal to that converted mana cost. So nice in the late game when people are holding on to a couple of cards that are usually high value. So we'll go with that. Brainstealer Dragon, beginning of your end step, exile the top 2 cards of each opponent's library. You may play those cards for as long as they remain exiled, spend mana anyway, etc, etc, etc. And whenever a non-land permanent opponent enters the battlefield under our control, they lose life equal to its mana value. Yeah, I'm very glad this Brainstealer made it back in. It's very nice. Sheldred, the Whispering One, yep. Gets something from someone's graveyard and everybody sacks things, that's fine. Thieving Amalgam, the Ape Snake, at the beginning of each opponent's upkeep you may manifest the top card of that player's library, and whenever a creature you control but don't own dies, its owner loses 2 life and you gain 2 life. Yeah, okay then, happy with that, thank you. And of course I'm playing black, so Archon of Cruelty's here again, although the discard does have relevance with Tinybones. Planeswalkers, adjust to 3, Liliana with the Veil for the extra discard, Liliana Walker with the Dead for the extra discard, and Liliana Vest to go and find the cards I want out of my library. That's that. Spells, Vicious Rumours, deals 1 damage to each opponent discards a card, then puts the top card of their library into their graveyard and we gain a life, all for 1 mana. Tinybones, turn 3 with this is funny, has to be said. Exsanguinate, just because we need another way to win once we get there, and this is the easiest way to do it. Arterial Flow, each opponent discards 2 cards. If we control a vampire, each opponent loses 2, we gain 2. Dark Deal, each player discards all cards in his or her hand, and then draws that many cards -1. I like this one with Tinybones, makes me giggle. Creeping Chill deals 3 damage to each opponent and you gain 3 life. If it's put in our graveyard from our library, we can just exile it and do it for free, basically. Damnation controls the board. Dredge the Mire lets each opponent choose a creature card in their graveyard. Put those cards onto the battlefield under our control. It's nice when you've hit it for a lot of discard and there's some really nice creatures in the graveyard. Or it may be there's just 2 creatures out of the 3 graveyards and that's it. And you want them and they're very good and your opponents get upset. Be careful though if they're playing Homeward Bound. Anyway, let's play a game just because hopefully we'll have Delirium at some stage. We can do all 3 things. Siphon the Mind, everyone discards 1 and we draw a card for each one discarded that way. Unnerve, each of your opponent chooses and discards 2 cards. Gix's Command, couple of +1/+1 counters and lifelink on something we need it. Destroy each creature with power 2 or less, which we won't want to do if Tinybones is in play unless we put the +1/+1s. We can return 2 creature cards from our graveyard to our hand, or each opponent sacrifices a creature they have with the highest power amongst creatures they control, which is probably what we will be doing, is a little bit more removal. Season of the Lost is here again. Talked about it yesterday. For this one, it is going to be mainly a whole load of number 1 pause, so everyone sacrifices creatures. Bad deal, you draw 2 and each opponent discards 2, then each player loses 2 life. Yeah, okay, go with that. Capital punishment, I just like making people vote, so that's fine. I'm guessing they would vote for discarding most of the time with this, but you will be, definitely. Mind stab, just a bit of suspend, just hit the person who's got the most cards when this comes off suspend, and I hope you've got Tinybones in play by that stage. Zoth Consumption is an extra land for the deck, but if we need to play it as a consumption itself, everyone loses 4, we gain 4. Does help. And Decree of Pain. Destroy all creatures, they can't be regenerated, draw a card for each creature destroyed this way, or we can cycle it to get rid of a whole load of small things if we need to. Ramp, Tantalite, Talisman, Soul Ring, Arcane Signet, Charcoal, Jet Diamond. Bontu's Monument, because black creature spells cost 1 less, so it cuts the cost of Tinybones down, and then whenever we cast a creature spell, everyone loses 1, we gain 1. Elixir of Immortality to shuffle everything back in, so we can repeat all our discard if we need to. Throne of Eldraine, because we're back on mono, so this made sense. Plus we need the extra mana to do the activated ability on Tinybones, which this gives us in one nice package. And then Matazalanti, the Great Door, draw and discard. Yep, I'll cope with that. Transform it, activate only if there are 4 more permanent types amongst cards in your graveyard, which we should probably be able to do. We get to flip it and do add X mana of any one colour, or X is the number of permanent cards in our graveyard. We should be able to get there. We have enough permanent types going along, so I would guess we'll get there quite happily at some stage. Maybe later in the game, but we will get there. Anyway, enchantments. Tinybones joins up. Yep, Tinybones comes into play. Commit a crime, do this, and whenever a legendary creature enters the battlefield under our control, any number of target players each mill a card and lose a life. That's fine, go with that. Bandit's Talent enters, each opponent discards 2 unless they're discarded on land. And then we get to do the whole, if they've got less than 2 or few cards, they lose 2 life at level 2. And level 3, beginning of draw step, draw an additional card for each opponent who has 1 or fewer cards in their hand. Yeah, okay, keeps us going, like that. Liliana's Crest, whenever an opponent discards, they lose 2 life. Waste Not, whenever an opponent discards, we get zombies, mana, or card draw. Agent of the Armed Throne, whenever an artifact or creature we control is put in a graveyard, each opponent loses 1 life. So that's quite nice. There's the Bastion of Remembrance, that's in as well. Another way of getting rid of things. Megrim, to deal the damage when opponents discard. Oath to Liliana, everyone sacks a creature, and then probably not going to get many zombies off because we've only got 3 planeswalkers, but it's sacrificing the creature helps a bit. And finally, the Court of Ambition. Yeah, become the Monarch. At the beginning of your upkeep, each opponent loses 3 life unless they discard. If they're the Monarch instead, each opponent loses 6 life unless they discard 2. It's very nice for Tinybones. A bit shy on land, I'll be honest. There's a few cards. We've got enough ramp that I think will be okay, but 34 lands, including our 1 MFDC that we talked about earlier. But we've got enough ways of doing it. Baron War, Bajuka Bulk, and then we have the usual suspects with Cabal Coffers, Cabal Stronghold are in here. Nykthos is here to get our mana on the go. We have Herbals, make sure everything is a swamp. Temple of the False God, Reliquary Tower. I think we'll be alright. I really do, even with 33 lands plus an MDFC. We're not too bad on mana casting costs, the stuff we want to do is early on, so maybe 1 short, maybe we should drop something, put an extra land in, go up to 35 maybe, plus the MDFC, but we'll see how it goes, but I think I'll be alright playing it this way. And if it all comes to pear shape, this is the first card that gets cut, Matazilla. So bear that in mind, but I think we'll be okay. And that's my take today on Tinybones, who is the last one of the main set Legends from Foundation. So sad, reached the end, but we've still got quite a few to go through from Jumpstart. But I'll be mixing the Jumpstart things up as from next week with some of the other Legends that people have asked me to cover, or ones I've missed out that I've realised. Just to keep things going on the channel. we've not got any real set releases for a while now, so if there is a legend you want to see that I haven't covered, I mean, there's now, with videos from this week, there's around about 600 videos on different cards on the video, on the channel itself. Let me know. Leave a comment down below, send me a message on Twitch, whatever you want to do. Hit the subscribe button, do all the things I need you to do, like, share, engage with the algorithm, help me out. But for now, that wraps up the Foundation's main set cards. Next week, do some jumpstart ones, do some other bits and pieces, and have a lot of fun. So for now, thanks for watching, take care, I'll be back next week. Bye.